Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Bible Studies for Regular People. If you are a regular people, you're in the right place. If you're not, we'll let you stay anyway. You just join right in, and that'll be fine. Good to have you. We are in the book of Genesis. I hope that you'll get a Bible, a notebook, and a pen and join us in our study of Genesis. You may turn to Genesis 12, and we're going to get into chapter 13 as well today, Lord willing. And so happy to have you along. I hope if you haven't already that you will check out our YouTube channel, which is also called Bible Studies for Regular People. If you would like to find that, you can go to YouTube, search Bible Studies for Regular People channel. When that thing pops up, you can click on it and then you can go and subscribe, and you can click the bell to get notifications when we add new content, which is regularly, thanks to our head IT and audio visual media man, David McCullough. Hello, Miss Effie, Miss Vicky, and Miss Margaret. Hope you all are well. Hello, Miss Connie. Good to see you. So, what else we got going on? Well, I've got a group and a free private Facebook group if you are a Christian dealing with stress, overwhelm, frustration. And if you're a mom or a wife, you can join that free private Facebook group. Just simply type the word group in the comments and I'll get you that invite out. It's beautiful here. It's hot. It's sunny. And we're enjoying it. Brother Bernard, howdy. David, my friend, good to see you. Appreciate everything you do, sir. I literally could not do without David McCullough in my life. And so just can't appreciate him enough. Thank you, my friend. So Genesis chapter 12. So we've got Abraham from Ur to Haran, and then into Canaan, down to the Negev, which is the southern part of Palestine. So in verse 10, this is a really neat passage, verses 10 to 20, because it's a really cool, hello, Miss Janet. It's a really cool instance of foreshadowing. And what Moses is doing is he's going to show the departure of Abraham, who at this point is the people of God. He's going to show the, all right. Yeah, I don't know, Miss Amy. I'm sorry about that. I hope everybody else is good. Miss Lois, howdy. So he's going to show the departure of, so follow this. He's going to show the departure of the Jew, Abram, the people of God right now. Abram, the departure from Canaan to Egypt and then back to Canaan again, right? So that's really nice foreshadowing of the Israel going from Canaan later into Egypt. But remember who Moses is writing to. Moses is writing to the Israelites after they have come out of Egypt, before they enter into Canaan. So what is he communicating to them? He's communicating to them in this story that God knew what was coming, right? That it had all played out before. So God knew what was coming. He was in control of it. There are going to be a lot of similarities, and I hope you'll make some notes about this. A lot of similarities between Genesis 12, 10 through 13, 1, and between that and the Exodus, what will happen later. Moses is telling them that so they'll know that God is in control of this whole thing. He's got this. He's been through this before. And it demonstrates, right, that the end of this story is that Abram got into Canaan. And so what he's telling them is God is going to get you into Canaan. Abram's story regarding Egypt is going to match up to Israel's story regarding Egypt and the entrance into Canaan. So need to make those connections. Now there was a famine in the land, right? That's the reason, again, later in Genesis, why the family of Jacob is going to go into Egypt at all, because there's a famine. There's a famine in the land, so Abram went down to Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was severe in the land. And Egypt was very much the consistent source of food in that part of the world in ancient times because of the Nile, and they normally had food. So it came about when he came near to Egypt that he said to Sarai his wife, "See now, I know that you're a beautiful woman. When the Egyptians see you, they will say, 'This is his wife,' and they will kill me, but they will let you live. Please say that you're my sister, so that it may go well with me because of you, and that I may live on account of you." So, first of all, kudos to Sarah for, she's, she's getting up there, and no insult to anybody. I'm getting up there too. But typically, you don't look at a man or a woman at that stage of life and go, somebody would be willing to kill for you because of your looks. Abraham, maybe you think he's, being sweet, but it's true. What it says when Abram came into Egypt in verse 14, the Egyptians saw that the woman was very beautiful. And Pharaoh's officials saw her, praised her to Pharaoh, and the woman was taken to Pharaoh's house. So Abraham's not just complimenting his wife and being sweet. It happens. What he feared actually happened. So, way to go, Sarah. But hello, mother. But the problem here is that if Abram had the faith in God that he could have had and should have had, this would never have been an issue at all. Because Abram literally can't die, because God has promised him descendants and a nation. Abram at this point is literally unkillable. He cannot die. And so his fear is absolutely unwarranted, as fear usually is. And he doesn't need to do this, but what he does is, as he will do later, trying to help God. And, as we do sometimes, he wants to help God. God is protecting Abram at this point and literally preventing him from dying until he has children. He cannot die. But Abram feels like he has to sort of take matters into his own hands, and so he tells a lie. So, in verse 16, Pharaoh treated Abram well for her sake, thinking it's his sister. He's going to, bless Abram because on account of his sister, and gave him sheep, oxen, donkeys, male and female servants, female donkeys, and camels. Remember the promise that God made to Abram: I will bless you and make your name great. And so Abram is being enriched as God promised that he would. Now remember, there are two kinds of covenants in the Bible. There are conditional and unconditional. Conditional: if you do this, I will do this. If you don't do this, I won't do that. And unconditional: I'm going to do this regardless. So think about the covenant with Noah. Was it conditional or unconditional? It was unconditional. God said, I will never flood the earth again the way that I did here. The covenant with Israel was conditional. They had to be obedient or they would lose the things that God had given them. This covenant, the covenant that God makes with Abraham, is unconditional. God does not tell Abraham, if you will blank, I will give you the 7 things that we talked about, does he? He just says, I'm going to do it. So even though Abraham lies, God is still bound to fulfill his covenant. Even though Abraham has lied from a lack of faith to a degree anyway, even though Abraham lied, God is still going to bless him the way he said he was. And so Abraham is going to come out of this thing much richer than he went in, even though he lied, because of the promise of God. But the Lord struck Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. Isn't that interesting? Just like the plagues in the time of Moses. A lot of foreshadowing and a big point being made here about God knows what's going on. He's planned it. He's been through this before. And what happened here is what's going to happen with the Israelites. Abraham was able to leave Egypt and go into Canaan. Moses is telling the Israelites, you're going to be able to go into Canaan as well. So notice the connection with the plagues in Egypt and Pharaoh. Then Pharaoh called Abram. Same thing with Moses, right? Pharaoh called Moses and said, get out. Pharaoh called Abram and said, what is this that you have done to me? Why did you not tell me she was your wife? Why did you say she's my sister, so that I took her for my wife? Now then, here is your wife, take her and go. And he doesn't say, and leave all that stuff I gave you. Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they escorted him away with his wife and all that belonged to him. So God is fulfilling that promise to Abraham in spite of his behavior. Chapter 13 and verse 1. So Abram went up from Egypt to the Negev, southern part of Palestine, he and his wife and all that belonged to him, and Lot with him. So exactly what's going to happen to Israel. They went from Canaan into Egypt, then they're going to go back to the promised land. Abram went from Canaan to Egypt, going back to the promised land. Hey, Ron. Verse 2. So now Abram was very rich in livestock, silver, and gold. And that's an understatement, as we're going to see later. That doesn't touch the wealth of Abraham. He was very rich. He went on his journeys from the Negev as far as Bethel, to the place where his tent had been at the beginning between Bethel and Ai, to the place of the altar which he had made there formerly. And there Abram called on the name of the Lord. So notice that Abraham is a wanderer. Abraham is, right, like the old song, once there were three wandering Jews. Abram is a wanderer. He is a nomad. And he's not going to he's going to possess a very, very small plot of land, just enough to bury his wife in. That's the only land in Canaan he will ever possess. The Israelites are going to go in, they're going to take control of it. They won't have to wander anymore if they'll be faithful, but he's a wanderer. Verse 5, now Lot, who went with Abram, also had flocks, herds, and tents, and the land could not sustain them while dwelling together, for their possessions were so great that they were not able to remain together. Boy, there's a great problem to have, right? That'd be nice, wouldn't it? And there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's. Now the Canaanite and the Perizzite were dwelling then in the land. So Abram said to Lot, please let there be no strife between you and me, nor between my herdsmen and your herdsmen, for we're brothers. And that, what a beautiful statement that is. And Moses is going to do the same thing. And Moses is sending a message here, because the Israelites were prone to disagreement, that sort of thing, regional rivalries, north and south, tribal issues and difficulties, and just general violence toward one another. And so he brings out this principle: we are brothers, there should be no strife between us. Moses is going to say the same thing to the Israelites who are fighting. Remember when Moses said, your brothers, why are you fighting? And they rebelled against him in that. Remember that. And so Moses is making a point here. Your brothers, your Jews, your God's people, there should not be disagreement and strife among you. Yeah, exactly, David. So, verse 9, is not the whole land before you? Please separate from me. If to the left, I will go to the right. To the right, then I will go to the left. So it's an amicable split here. This is, nobody's angry at anybody. They just have to part. And sometimes you do. I mean, sometimes you just have to separate from people. And it's, nothing, it's like, don't go away angry, just go away. And sometimes you just have to do that. Now, there are some relationships, of course, that are binding, and we're not able simply to walk away from something like marriage or something like a parent-child relationship or something like that. But there are lots and lots of relationships that we're not bound to, and sometimes because of the situation, we just have to go our separate ways. Paul and Barnabas did it. And it doesn't mean anybody hates anybody or is angry, but sometimes we have to separate. Sometimes there are toxic people, negative people that you have to separate from. And it doesn't have to be ugly, but it just has to be done. So it's interesting that Abram does this, and it could be that Abram was just a nice guy, and he's just saying, hey, I don't, even if it hurts me, I'm going to let you go. Or it could be that he is very convinced, particularly after that thing that happened in Egypt with the great wealth, that he's convinced that it doesn't matter where he ends up, he's going to be blessed. And so he's okay to let Lot choose. Lot lifted up his eyes and saw all the valley of the Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as you go to Zoar. So Lot chose for himself all the valley of the Jordan, and Lot journeyed eastward Thus, they separated from each other. So notice again, which direction did Lot go? He went east, and going east in the Bible is what? Typically, going east in the Bible is going away from God. And of course, that's exactly where Lot ends up, as we'll see. A lot of times we make a big deal about Lot choosing for himself. I don't know I mean, what was he going to choose for? I mean, I don't know that really is a point to be made there. He just chose. He was given the right to choose, and he chose. Nothing wrong with that. But he did only consider the fact that of what he saw. He did only think about what he saw rather than other considerations. And obviously, it's a very wicked place, and that's the sort of thing one ought to think about, right? If one has a family, especially. But he doesn't seem to, and anyway, that's where he settles. Abram settled in the land of Canaan, while Lot settled in the cities of the valley and moved his tents as far as Sodom. Now the men of Sodom were wicked exceedingly and sinners against the Lord. Hard to imagine that Abram and Lot didn't know that this was the case, and yet Lot ignores it. He ignores influence, he ignores network and associations and that sort of thing. And of course, he's going to pay the price for it. The Lord said to Abram, after Lot had separated from him, "Now lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, north, south, east, and west. For all the land which you see, I will give it to you and to your descendants forever. I will make your descendants as the dust of the earth, so that if anyone can number the dust of the earth, then your descendants can also be numbered. Arise, walk about the land through its length and breadth, for I will give it to you." Then Abram moved his tent and came to and dwelt by the oaks of Mamre, which are in Hebron, and there he built an altar to the Lord. So everywhere Abram goes, he builds an altar. He believes, he's trusting, he's worshiping. Significant to notice how he builds an altar everywhere he goes. And notice that every time that God appears to Abram with the promise, hey, women, every time that Abram receives a new revelation from God, it's sort of updated, clarified, deepened, given more detail, that sort of thing, as God continually adds to the promise. Chapter 14 and verse 1. Now it came about in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, which is Babylon, Arioch, king of Eleazar, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of Goyim, that they made war with Bera, king of Sodom, and with Bersha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, Shemeber, king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar. All these came as allies to the valley of Siddim, that is the Salt Sea. 12 years they had served Chedorlaomer, but the 13th year they rebelled. In the 14th year, Chedorlaomer and the kings that were with him came and defeated the Rephaim and Ashtaroth Karnaim, and the Zuzim and Ham, and the Emim and Shava Kiriathaim, and the Horites in their Mount Seir, as far as El Paran, which is by the wilderness. Then they turned back and came to En Mishpat, that is Kadesh, and conquered all the country of the Amalekites, also all the Amorites who lived in Hazazon Tamar. And the king of Sodom, and the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, and the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar, came out, and they arrayed for battle against them in the valley of Siddim, against Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, Tidal, king of Goyim, Amraphel, king of Shinar, and Arioch, king of Elasar, 4 kings against 5. A little bit of practice over the years, Kathy, with that for sure. Doing it a lot over time certainly makes a difference. I'm sure you could work some math problems I couldn't even touch very, very quickly. That would take me some time that I would never get correctly. I could never get correct, rather. But anyway, so the point of all that is, and why Moses feels the need to torture us that way by going through all of that, I don't know. Why he's like, I'm going to put those names in there and make them read them again. I don't know what his problem is, but the point is that they're going to come. Into the area where Lot is. That's the big point, right? That they're going to come where Lot is. And so it says that in verse 10, the valley of Siddim was full of tar pits, and the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled and fell into them. Well, that'd be a way to go, wouldn't it? But those who survived fled to the hill country. Then they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah, all their food supply, and departed. They also took Lot, Abram's nephew, and his possessions and departed, for he was living in Sodom. And so that's the upshot of the whole thing, right? Moses could have just said there was a battle and Lot was taken, but he had to put us through all that torture. So a fugitive came and told Abram the Hebrew. The first time that's used in the Bible, I think, that word Hebrew. That's the first time that's going to start to be used for the people of God. Now he was living by the oaks of Mamre, the Amorite brother of Eshcol, the brother of Aner, and these were allies with Abram. When Abram heard that his relative had been taken captive, he led out his trained men, born in his house, 318, and went in pursuit as far as Dan. So it appears that even though he had these allies, he's not going to use them. He's only going to use what he has, and that may be consistent with what we're going to notice. Notice that this blows me away. He had 318 people born in his house. Don't miss that. He had 318 men who were old enough to fight, born in his house. How many servants do you have to have? I mean, at the most, or at the least, that's 308 was at 636. See, I'm terrible at math, but I can say a name. Hundreds of people who serve you, and he can raise an army from his own house. God had promised him, I will bless you and make your name great. And that's exactly what God has done. So, he divided his forces against them by night, he and his servants, and defeated them and pursued them as far as Hobah, which is north of Damascus. He brought back all the goods and also brought back his relative Lot with his possessions and also the women and the people. Then after his return from the defeat of Kedorlaomer and the kings who were with him, the king of Sodom went out to meet him at the valley of Shaveh, that is the king's valley, and Melchizedek, king of Salem. And so here we're introduced to Melchizedek, which if it were not for a couple of passages later, we wouldn't even notice Melchizedek. But because of Psalm 110, which is one of the most significant passages in all of the Old Testament, and because of Hebrews 5 through 7, we know that Melchizedek was extremely, extremely relevant to Bible history and to Christian history. Melchizedek, king of Salem, that's Jerusalem. And so Melchizedek, whose name means king of righteousness, his name means king of righteousness. When we say king of Salem or king of Jerusalem, that means king of peace, as the Hebrew writer points out. Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. Now he was a priest of God Most High. He blessed him. So Melchizedek blessed Abraham and said, "Blessed be Abram of God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth. Blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand." He, Abram, gave him, Melchizedek, a tenth. And so Abram gives Melchizedek a tenth, a tithe. The king of Sodom said to Abram, "Give the people to me, take the goods for yourself." Abram said to the king of Sodom, "I have sworn to the Lord Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, that I will not take a thread or sandal, thong, or anything that's yours, for fear you would say, I have made Abram rich. I will take nothing except what the young men have eaten, and the share of the men who are with me, Honor, Eshcol, and Mamre, let them take their share." So I stand corrected. I always get that wrong. He did have some allies with him that were not related to him. So apologies on that. But notice this. He takes the stuff from Pharaoh, but he doesn't take it from the king of Sodom. Why would he do that? The only thing I can come up with is because he didn't want to be associated with Sodom. He didn't want to be associated with the king of Sodom because of their extreme wickedness. Now, it's not like Pharaoh was, a church-going Christian, but the Sodomite king was known particularly in the whole place for wickedness, and Abraham seems not to want to be associated with that and to have gained his wealth from that. He doesn't want them to have that association with him or he with them. It seems. I don't know. So that's chapter 14. Lord willing, we'll do chapter 15 tomorrow at noon, and that'll be live. I would love for you to share the video. That's really, really helpful of all the things that you could do that would really be helpful to me. I hope that you will share the video so that other folks that you know can find it and can join us as well. So happy you're here. Great to see you. Love to see you again tomorrow, Lord willing, live at noon for our study, and we'll be in Genesis 15. Have a great day.